What's up, man? Welcome to Port Report.
I heard that horn in the background. Did you throw that in there for me?
Yeah, I did throw a little ship horn for you and all the people tuning in on the live feed and enjoying these streams, these all-day streams we have on FreightWaves, the app. We have them on FreightWaves LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook channel.
Love it, man.
So I woke up the other day. My name is Dooner. I host a lot of stuff over here. 15-year industry veteran. Henry Byers, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Henry Byers. Not nearly as cool as Mr. Dooner here, but market expert here at FreightWaves. Work in the maritime sector, so international freight forwarding, mostly the containerized trade, helping our data scientists wrangle that massive data set.
We got a pretty awesome show today. So we have been putting out a lot of stuff. This started with the Online Hall of Fame. It's a new thing on FreightWaves.com, but they covered McLean Trucking, and it got me thinking about containers, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we haven't done anything on the history of the container. We did a little bit on Chinese New Year last episode.
We did.
I was digging the history thing, the historical slant.
You love your, what is his name, Yan Huang?
Yan Wang. Well, it's something very similar to the first podcast I started, which was the Shipping Pod, and we would do like sort of news and then a topic, and we'd dive in. So That's kind of the angle I'm coming for with that. So we're going to talk about that. We're gonna dive deep on how the economics behind the box changed the world, the shipping container and all that. We're going to call out to Adam Robinson. He's the marketing manager at Cerasis. Big deal was announced. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but GlobalTraz has acquired Cerasis.
That's huge.
What do you think about that one?
Man, it's awesome. I think, you're taking, really advanced TMS platform, leveraging that. I mean, think about how many developers are going alongside that, how much, the beauty of a lot of these deals is like in the back end, the architecture, the resources, everything like that. I think it's a brilliant move. GlobalTraz is what, number 9 largest freight broker?
Yeah, it was 8 or 9, maybe even bigger now with this acquisition. I think it was, maybe was it their 11th since 2017 or their 17th? I wonder if I'm messing up my numbers here, but they've been quite active in that space. And Adam Robinson finding himself in a new home. We'll find out what that's going to change for him. I told him I'd call him out at 3:05, so just a minute here. If you guys have any questions during the show, we do have you up on the live feed here. I'm monitoring the LinkedIn questions, so anything on there, let us know. Let's shout out to Adam Robinson, find out what's going on with this deal, and then we'll break down the Phase 1 trade deal for all you guys. I know you dived deep on it last night. You read the entire document, which is, you're a real trade nerd when you're opening up trade doc. What did you, just real briefly, what was the best part about reading a trade document?
I think it was real interesting because, it's how it's written. We were talking about it. It's like pure lawyer talk, man.
Yeah.
It's super hard for the average reader. You end up having to reread things because you're like, what is that really saying? Because there's so much hidden in the context. You can imagine, right? Like Chinese. I mean, how are these guys interpreting this?
Yeah.
When you see the interpretations over there into English, it just doesn't translate well.
Yeah.
So it just, to me, was very striking to see how it was worded because I'm just thinking, how are we going to hold them to a lot of this?
Especially seeing like anything like Google Translate or anything like that.
I mean, it's amazing. But yeah, it was only like, 12 pages, 13 pages, something like that.
Not bad. So, all right, let's check out. It's 3:05. Let's call Adam up. Let's see what he's doing. This is a big deal for him, too. He's been with Cerasis for some time. He does a lot of their marketing over there. He's also a podcaster, so he's
really?
a man for my heart,
Yeah.
Always like to try and help out the other podcasts of the world out there, but he really believes in content marketing behind this, and maybe it was his amazing content marketing that helped make this deal go through.
I'm sure had a lot to do with it.
Can we blame him for it? I don't know. Hopefully he answers. He said he would. Very exciting. Let's give him a little shit. Hey, Adam.
Hey, this is Adam.
Hey, man. You're like a 9-ring kind of guy.
Oh, that was awesome.
I like to keep you waiting.
Yeah. I know. You just big time does that because you have that big deal going on. Congratulations, Global. You got a new mothership flying over you, right?
Yes, we do. GlobalTraz has acquired Cerasis. It is a very exciting announcement.
So, when did you find out? Did you find out when the press release come out, or you being the marketing manager over there? Did you have a little inside information ahead of time? What do you do to prepare for a moment like that? You guys all gonna have a birthday cake?
Well, we were at a town hall this morning, and they announced everything. I was told by management about a week early to prepare for it, but we told all of the employees this morning.
Big time, man. Henry, you were looking up a little bit about GlobalTraz and the Cerasis marriage. What's your takeaway? What's your assumptions?
No, I love it. First of all, congratulations, Adam.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I was telling Dooner a little bit about GlobalTraz. Do you mind just kind of telling our viewers a little bit about GlobalTraz and kind of the business model and why this is a good fit?
Yeah, it's an excellent fit. Cerasis and GlobalTraz have both been, titans in the LTL space, and GlobalTraz is even more of a titan when it comes to full truckload. And with Cerasis really focusing on the less than truckload space, with great technology through our TMS, the Cerasis Rater, handling LTL, for 2 decades, and GlobalTraz with their prowess and their size. When you put all of that together, the freight under management number becomes much larger. And so what that means is better national pricing for some of those smaller shippers, but a stronger ability to go out and get pricing by lane and do RFPs with carriers. And so with that more solid mode approach, and then with our release recently of our final LTL to final mile product and the ability to compare parcel rates to LTL rates in real time, the joining of our two companies really kind of consolidates that surface road shipping powerhouse. We will now be a true full transportation management solutions company, handling some of the most important things that shippers are facing that they're having trouble finding solutions for in final mile, e-commerce, and the changes in LTL. And the carrier environment right now is interesting, so it's important that shippers diversify their carrier base. And with those two companies together, we have an extreme amount of good carriers to put in that technology for shippers to access with ease.
We love GlobalTraz over here, especially on the audio and video side, because it was about 6-7 months ago where they took a chance on us when we were starting FreightWaves TV, and they decided to sponsor one of our pilots. It was off the supply chain, and they really believed in the vision. And these live streams that are happening right now, you're on our all-day live stream. And the beauty of that when we go live on these shows is that if news like this breaks, and I know someone like you, Adam, I can bring you right up on air.
Absolutely. I'm excited for that join up of the marketing team, right? And beyond just the joining of our capabilities, what we're going to be able to do together at Cerasis and GlobalTraz. And as you guys have been following Cerasis, of course, we're all media heads. We love all of this new podcast and video and live streaming type stuff. When you bring all of that together, it just gives us more ability to have more fun with that kind of stuff, put more resources towards it. Me personally, I've been operating on a pretty small budget, and, I've done a lot of good things, I think, organically with Cerasis, with the Freight Project podcast and our video series. When you add on GlobalTraz and a whole team with that, we're going to have a heck of a lot of fun. And I think, just like you guys have been doing at FreightWaves to make freight fun, we're not only going to make freight fun, but we're also going to give them solutions at the same time. So fun plus, helping people out to get things shipped a little bit easier, nothing better than that.
Yeah, Adam, when I was with Aborn, I was doing something sort of similar to what you were doing with Cerasis. Was a lot of that organic kind of growth and pitching a new idea to companies that didn't traditionally do content marketing via podcasts and videos and via blogs and all of those things. And I always admired your work over there, and it must feel a little bit like, for me, when going to FreightWaves and having all these extra resources to build an entire network, now you get to bring a lot of your ideas with the backing of a giant like GlobalTraz, the 8th largest freight broker. I believe that was in 2018, so you guys have probably only grown.
Absolutely. And we've grown pretty successfully with our focus on the LTL side, even. It's a function of the industry was hit growth in 2018, but we've been bringing on new customers ourselves. And so when you combine the LTL spend that we have under management with their full truckload, it becomes quite the powerhouse. And that's what we're going to see in the industry, right? More consolidation. And at the end of the day, the shipper is hopefully the one who gets advantage of that, and hopefully the carriers too, right? Because then the carriers have less players to deal with to arrange freight, but they can maybe have more reliable freight streams themselves. And we all have known the struggle that carriers have had this year as well, and we don't want to see any more of those truckers lose jobs. I know how important that is for us.
He brings up a good point in consolidation as well. I think we've talked about this before, that I think that this decade we're going to see a lot of that amongst 3PLs, amongst tech providers. I mean, because there can only be so many TMSs, and then there are giant companies like the GlobalTraz of the world that understand the value of the data and the great service that a product like Cerasis provides. They have the money and the bandwidth to invest in a company like yours, and it just makes a ton of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially these two modes specifically. I think, I was at Access America during the Coyote merger. Basically Access was dominant in like flatbed, Coyote was dominant in dry van. those two didn't really marry very well together. The operation model didn't really translate to flatbed, but I think LTL, integrating that, when you're not doing very well in LTL and you acquire someone who's really great at it, you're able to provide a service that's really unrivaled, because LTL can really be a pain. It's much like ocean transportation, right?
Yeah.
And how
Absolutely.
it moves. And
It's like a puzzle piece, a lot of moving parts.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I think what Renee Krug said from the CEO perspective this morning at our town hall was pretty exciting. She was excited about that LTL piece. And, on the GlobalTraz side, they kind of have that big full truckload business, but as a part of that, the customers are going to ask, hey, can you help us with LTL? And GlobalTraz isn't going to turn that business away. But now it's kind of like, hey, we can fully serve all of those modes for you. And it's a horrible metaphor, but one throat to choke. Easier just to use a system and go through one platform that the GlobalTraz family is now to handle all of those modes. Shippers don't want to be going to a bunch of different entities to make that happen. They want it to be streamlined, and they want to focus on their core business. And I think that's what this is about. And that's what all the other acquisitions are going to be about. So it's an exciting time. I'm excited for it. I think one of the big things that we want to say is people, get to know about this acquisition, especially if you're a Cerasis or GlobalTraz customer. For now, things are going to stay exactly the same. We're a Cerasis still, as part of the GlobalTraz family. So any shippers out there, if you do hear this and you're a Cerasis customer, your teams are going to stay the same. All of your people are going to stay the same. So for now, we're a part of the family, business as usual, and we're going to complement each other as those opportunities come around.
So you're not moving to Minnesota yet and getting a Kirk Cousins jersey?
No, I'll still be repping the perennial loser Cowboys, unfortunately. And I did enjoy 80 degrees here in Texas yesterday, and I hear it's about 2 degrees in Minnesota right now. So hopefully I'll keep my Texas warmness. Not ready for the Minnesota life.
Well, man, I love what you do with the Freight Project podcast, so I hope that they only turn you up instead of turn you down, and I think you're probably going to be on to great things. Not, though. Got a warm seat for you, Adam.
Congrats, Adam.
I think, thanks so much. I appreciate you guys having me on, and, y'all have a good day. Exciting times over here. If you need anything, you know where to find me.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Will do.
Right.
Thanks again.
Awesome. That was great to have Adam on. He's a good friend of mine. I've interviewed him on some of our other shows, and I'm happy for him. And I imagine that this is a great opportunity to grow a company like this. I've been with a smaller company too, and it's always exciting when you get that injection, because you kind of hit a ceiling in your growth, and right. And I'm not saying this applies to Cerasis that they were like stuck in motion or anything, but it is just like also when someone sticks a jetpack on you.
Right.
I don't know. Takes you to the next level.
Yeah, and you're able to just leverage the synergies across customers. I mean, think about how many customers GlobalTraz probably has that they're turning away LTL freight.
Yeah.
Now they're saying, okay, we can handle it now. So it makes a ton of sense.
All right, man, let's talk about that trade deal. We touched on it before we called Adam, but we wanted to cover his news and get it while it was hot. But U.S. and China, they signed this phase 1 trade deal, right? Trump said the deal will result in China greatly expanding imports from the U.S. He said the increase will make important progress in rebalancing the United States-China relationship. As part of the new agreement, China has pledged to increase imports of American goods and services by at least $200 billion. No small prize there.
No.
China's increase in United States imports will take place over the next 2 years, too. So split it in half, $100 billion a year. The trajectory is expected to continue even after 2021. This is supposed to make way for a phase 2 trade deal. The tariffs, though, so something that people have been concerned about, what's going on with the tariffs? Well, the 25% tariffs that are on $250 billion of Chinese goods will remain in place, and that 10% tariff on $300 billion of Chinese goods will be reduced to 7.5% as phase 2 negotiations take place. He said they can't pull it all back because they'd be leaving all the cards on the table.
Yeah, he's leaving it certainly as leverage is the main point. He's really trying to drive that phase 2, which a lot of people are criticizing this specific trade deal because they're saying, some of the things that we were hoping to address really weren't addressed in this specific one. And mainly him holding leverage like that, I think from his perspective, thinks he can bring the Chinese back to the table, as soon as possible.
Yeah, the LA Times wrote a pretty scathing piece about it. I don't know if you saw that one this morning, but they were saying that even after the agreement, the average U.S. tariff on Chinese imports will still be at 19.3%, a modest reduction from the pre-agreement level of 21% and more than 6 times its level of 3% before this trade war was even launched. So it's a minor salvo, but things are not restored back to normalcy.
Yeah, I mean, leaving tariffs on 2/3 of Chinese goods. I think from the Chinese perspective, I mean, you can only think about how they're receiving this, right? When it's more, what can you do for me? I mean, I think the U.S. is bound to have to give somewhere somehow, or the Chinese, I think, just won't abide by a lot of this.
Agriculture came up again in this one too, and it's one of those things where when the trade war first started, the big selling point was to get away from interdependency and to rely on our own goods and all of those things. And then very quickly, agriculture, farming, soybeans, things like that got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now if $200 billion or however it may be is going back into soybeans, what do you do as that farmer who's in a volatile trade war situation between two divorced parents who at any moment can decide to give up custody?
You've got to figure out plan B for sure. I think throwing your eggs all back in the basket with China as your main buyer is certainly leaving you exposed. I think with the rise of China, you're bound to see the U.S. and China at odds somewhere, somehow, geopolitically. I mean, this Iran situation, kind of brings that to light, right? There's a lot of factors out there still at play. But I think specifically in regards to this $200 billion, the one of the main criticisms was it was supposed to be 40 to 50 billion in agricultural goods. It ended up being somewhere around 32, and no one really knows what secret annex was signed on Tuesday. So all of the basically everything that the agreement specified in terms of this $200 billion was signed the day prior, and it wasn't publicly released. But how they summarized that in there was just 32, I think, billion was in agricultural goods. And Trump had promised between 40 and 50, which if you go back to 2017, essentially you would be doubling the amount that China purchased in 2017. So people are wondering, how is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, are you kind of implying that there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors going on here? And is it phase 1.5? Is it really phase 1? What does phase 2 look like? Are we going to get out of this tariff hell that a lot of retailers in? And it's funny, the NRF, they did chime in, the National Retail Federation, and they were supportive of the sense of getting a trade deal done because they've been hit pretty hard by this stuff. And then the Series 4A or whatever it was that were going to come in at the end of the year, they didn't, but that had them scared to death, especially going into the holiday season. And we talk about all the time the ripple effects that impacted the supply chains there. I mean, they were mildly supportive of this happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, I think people are wondering when this phase 2 is going to happen, because I think they just so basically the U.S. is commanding China to do something in terms of outlaying capital, purchasing U.S. goods. It's something that a lot of American diplomats over time have criticized, right? So they don't want this central planning approach to what should be free markets, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically saying you have to do this, you have to outlay this much capital. It's doing something that we've criticized for a long time. So it's a little contradictory in that sense.
You mentioned the word risk, and risk is becoming a new attention point for a lot of supply chains. I mean, I want to say it always has been. And I know when I worked for an apparel company, they were always concerned about risk and turmoil and what was going on at ports. But by and large, probably a lot of supply chains aren't, but I think that this trade war and the issues with Iran and everything have companies thinking a little bit differently, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
One of the enduring lessons of 2019, or really any year, is the potential upheaval that can face supply chains, whether it be the geopolitical, the environmental, or financial. All of that is prompting people to invest in risk. The China New Year back and forth. DHL Supply Chain's risk management software, though, their Resilience 360, it's going to expand this year with a $22.7 million investment that includes Columbia Capital and Green Spring Associates.
Wow.
Do you see more and more, we always talk about freight tech too. Do you see more and more money pouring into these softwares? I mean, if there's a market for it, of course.
Well, what's interesting is I noted a UK company that's specializing in basically somewhat of a consultancy about tech, freight tech. And then what they said is if you take away Flexport from 2019's numbers, I mean, SoftBank's investment, I think it was $1 billion.
Yeah.
That it actually decreased in 2019 from 2018, which I thought was interesting. So without Flexport, that number didn't have that massive increase. I think, with this consolidation, you're going to get such a concentration of what's actually good and what's not that I think you're bound to see there's going to be less opportunity to invest, I think. There's going to be less, potentially less startups. Now, that's as things are now. What you don't have is this, how robotics is going to really change everything, how AI. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and that's kind of where you're going to probably see a lot of this next wave. It's the battle for the drones, the airspace, robotics, stuff like that.
Well, I remember back in my apparel days, and this wasn't that long ago. It was, well, maybe actually, it is 2020. So this was 2011, but at the time there was no such thing as a great, really risk mitigation software, and we had to use so many different sources to keep an eye on different ports and to monitor our factories, and we were using a CTPAT, and doing tier 4 revalidations. It was laborious and it was terrible.
I was about to say, it sounds intriguing.
But most of your risk management was actually having to go to the actual factory and like taking pictures and then hoping that. And in apparel, especially in 2011, the big risk that people were trying to avoid was human rights violations, especially for bigger public companies, because that could be disastrous.
Yeah, I was telling somebody just a second ago, basically, when you're relying on someone to move your ocean freight, I mean, that means you trust your logistics provider. I mean, you know how hard it is to win, ocean business because there's so much risk involved.
Yeah.
I think this trade war has just brought to light just how much more risk can be involved. And I think you just have no other option. You've got to make sure that this, this additional risk has got to be mitigated.
Yeah.
Or you just can't mitigate the normal ones, which is just getting your freight from the country of origin to your loading docks, right?
Yeah, the simple stuff. What's Maersk up to?
Man, Maersk is a big headline just in terms of their investment in the cold supply chain. Basically, Maersk is with the acquisition of Damco, you're just seeing them get more involved in logistics. There's a theory out there, and it's certainly seemingly true with a lot of what's happened in the last couple of years with CMA and SEVA. They're investing in more of the land-based operations. They're trying to get more involved. They're just trying to bring more value to the end user. I think it's just like GlobalTraz and Cerasis. You're just trying to capture more of that volume that's already there. I think it's interesting to say from the cold supply chain because a lot of people's, a lot of customers of Maersk are in VOCCs and freight forwarders, right?
Yeah.
So it's like they can't just trample on them for this business. So they're trying to get into a space that's more specialized to alleviate a lot of those concerns.
But in a way, they have. Like if I have my risk software and I'm a global 3PL, and then I see Maersk or somebody buy a company like Vandegrift,
right?
I'm a little concerned because there suddenly becomes a conflict of interest there.
Huge conflict of interest, and Maersk can see everything about the shipment.
Yeah,
the shipment manifest that they have on board, they have to know the goods, so they know everything about that. So. Certainly leaves you pretty exposed. When we talk about mitigating risk, I would mitigate risk and basically say, I don't really want Maersk, spying on my operation and who my customers are if they can just come and take them from me.
It's sort of the same complaint that Amazon has. Amazon started from a different angle and is now positioning itself as that global 3PL forwarder, but suddenly you're giving them a ton of information.
Oh, yeah, and then Amazon runs the back end with Amazon Web Services. I mean, they're not supposed to be looking into that data, but I imagine they're a data company, man.
Yeah.
Their ability to manage data, I was talking to our data scientist, and he's like, yeah, we have probably, better data than anyone except Amazon, potentially,
Speaking of Amazon, they more than anyone, into our next headline to segue there, they more than anyone have really ratcheted up this last mile business. And everyone has an interest in last mile and same day and next day shipping. Well, because of that, a study published by the World Economic Forum is finding that the growth in last mile deliveries over the last decade is going to lead to slower transits and higher emissions in major cities across the world. Kind of obvious, but when you think of the real world ramifications and each person just exponentially ordering more and more boxes on those same day things. And when it's same day, you're going to have to deploy more and more different carriers, even if they're your own carriers, to bring those things to people to meet those windows. I mean, some of them are like within 2 hours.
Yeah, it's insane. And then Amazon, with your Prime, is delivering your groceries in 2 hours. I mean, my wife's gone kind of nuts on this recently, and I'm aware I have a Ring doorbell, another Amazon product, but I'm alerted every time somebody comes to the front door. I'm just amazed at how many packages are getting dropped off, and they're all on different routes.
With that acquisition, Amazon is the #1 home surveillance network in America too. So, I mean, they see everything. They put Alexa, and you can go get gas if you're a truck driver now on your Alexa. And you probably notice the commercials where they're really going hard at putting it everything is smart device, smart glasses, smart headphones, smart Alexa everywhere. I have one on my counter because I bought one when I was doing the Morning Minute just to kind of hear myself. And my kids like it. They're like play Shopping Penguin by Perry Grip and stuff like kids songs. Yeah. Oh, and the song Shiny from Moana. I don't know if you have Disney Plus or any of that.
Man, does it ever impress you when she can understand your kids?
That voice technology?
Yeah.
And then it frightens me on how much she's just like recording.
My niece was just yelling, Alexa. I mean, you couldn't even understand what she was saying, and Alexa played what she was looking for. It blew my mind. And remember, that's not part of the surveillance network.
No.
You know?
Well, supposedly.
It's at least not advertised that way.
So here's a scary thing about this, though, in terms of the environment's impact. The report focuses a 36% rise in the number of delivery vehicles in the world's top 100 cities by 2030. Mm-hmm. This is massive. It's going to lead to emissions increases over 30%, and congestion will amount to 11 minutes of extra commute time per passenger every day. You're going to have all that stuff shipped to you because you're not going to have time to go to the store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think your point about Tesla, you see kind of the long-term vision. I think that, electricity, the capacity of batteries, I mean, we've got to figure out that technology. And we can alleviate a lot of this because I do think going to the air is probably the answer, but I don't think a bunch of drones buzzing around. It's just going to seem kind of like a nightmare scenario.
Well, and Toyota just invested like $370 million in a flying taxi company. I mean, that's probably like for them, like one of their other bets, like, just in case that thing takes off, no pun intended.
Well, a lot of the, big billionaire Silicon Valley investors, man, they have like their own, it's the race. If you like research what a lot of these guys are into, a lot of them are into this like flying car scenario.
Yeah.
And trying to perfect that because they know how much opportunity, if you get it right and you get something that's safe and reliable, I mean, would you not have one?
Plus, if you do it, you're the guy who did it. Like when we were kids, we were promised robots and flying cars. Like, especially your kid from the 80s, this was like, pumped down your throat. Every like children's book was like, yeah, you're gonna have a robot when you grow up, and you're gonna have a flying car. It's gonna fit in a briefcase or whatever it may be. And we don't have those flying cars yet. And we don't have the Back to the Future 2 hoverboard.
It was awesome how many accurate things happened in 2015 that it predicted.
Oh, like the Cubs.
But then it was like the one missing thing were the hoverboards
and two
cars.
ties at the same time.
They even had the power laces, man. I've been waiting for those.
Well, they re-released those. Didn't they make like the power lace Yeezys? And they were like, sneakerheads are crazy. Some of that stuff is really expensive.
Oh yeah. It is a crazy business.
I think you have one more headline here regarding the alliance. Let's get to that. Then we'll talk about the box that changed the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's just about Hyundai. They were part of the 2M plus H. I think it's pretty big news. They're joining the alliance. So kind of another group of ocean carriers saying, okay, we'll because Hyundai, man, they've had it rough, right? You had Hanjin, another South Korean carrier. There's a lot of, speculation that basically the South Korean, government basically said, okay, we got to choose one. We're going to choose Hyundai because, think about Hyundai is like the brand.
Yeah.
You have Hyundai Heavy Industries that builds a lot of the ships, Hyundai cars. It's a huge conglomerate. But it's just interesting to see that Maersk and MSC were like, okay, we're, we can't really utilize you guys very well. So better luck with the alliance, I guess.
One of my first car was donated to me from my sister. It was a Thunderbird, but the second one was like an '89 Hyundai Excel.
Oh wow!
And it was not a good car.
When did they start making cars like that? That was that the first model?
I think right at the end of the '80s, probably.
Unbelievable. Do you have a picture of you in that thing?
I don't. It broke down on the side of the road when I was 16. We were going to this place. It was like a horror movie. We were going to this place called Spooky World, and then we saw a house in the distance. So we walked through the woods right off Route 95 in Massachusetts. Where were we at the time? I forget exactly. But we were on the way to Spooky World, and we walked right through the woods over there, and we went to this house, and it was just the guy there offered us beer and everything. And we're like, we're 16, man. We just need a tow truck. But we went inside. I don't know. We survived.
Just in my Hyundai, man.
To be a kid, it was right before cell phones, too. It was like 1995, 96 era.
The only cell phones were the big bricks.
Yeah, you had to be like Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell to have a cell phone. All right, man. So, the other thing real quick. My kids are 3 and 5, and I walked out of my bedroom the other day, and they were like in the middle of watching the 1997 movie Titanic. If you see that with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And it's a long movie. Like, I was impressed by like how long it was, and then but then my wife is like horrified by what's like actually happening in the film, like when the boat crashes. But I don't know. My kids have like read the books and like the history books, and they watch like videos on YouTube, like kids like Brightside videos on what happened to it. So I don't know. Is it okay to show your 5-year-old Titanic? I didn't put it on. They know how to use the Apple TV.
I don't think it's bad. Yeah, man. It was a big event in history. It's they must have just been like, captivated by it.
The effects hold up, most of them. Most of them do, because they had like real water and stuff going in those tunnels. Yeah. Little known fact though, so Solus was a big issue in like 2015 or 2016 when they were changing
the BGM.
Safety of life. But SOLAS happened as a result of the Titanic sinking.
Oh, wow.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because there was a ship, I forget the exact name. It might have been the Olympia or something, but they were seeing the flares that the Titanic was sending, and they completely ignored it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they just let all the people just like freeze to death out there.
So this one did not hit an iceberg. This one was just cruising by. Still didn't see him. So this could have been potentially a rescue ship?
They could have been
wow.
Yeah, they could have been, and they didn't do it.
Well, they were totally ill prepared. I mean, it was like, this thing is unsinkable, and it's like, let's just sacrifice some life rafts. That'll be
well, and then just think about the chaos that happens anywhere. Like, if even at like a buffet,
right?
And that's like I mean, there's enough plates for everybody, but like, even if there was enough lifeboats, it's people are in a panic, and you're trying to take all these life rafts into the water at the same time. I don't know. They probably could have saved more people. That door could have been big enough to fit Jack and what was Kate Winslet's character's name?
Oh man, God, I want to say Kate. That's not right.
Kate. Well, maybe it was Kate. Like she was Kate Winslet, and her character was also Kate.
I want to say Sarah. That's not right.
I don't know.
Who knows?
Let's talk about the box that changed the world back in the day.
You gotta give us a horn for this intro.
Before the container, shipping was like this on the seas. Iceberg! Right ahead!
Oh, I see what you did there. Where did you get that sound effect?
Kraken! I think he said the Kraken was there. Well, that was shipping before. That was sea life. That was sea life. That was shipping on the sea before the shipping container is here. And we take it for granted, right? It's massively changed the world.
Like, completely.
When you had to send things, it was by break bulk, like meaning you would just put whatever crap you had to send on a boat. You'd cover it with a tarp. Yeah. Hopefully it got there fine, not rotted, not spoiled.
Offload it with cargo nets.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy how primitive it really was, how much it stayed the same for so long until this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's back when like Lloyd's of London, who a lot of people think is an insurance company, but they're not. They're right. Just a risk bets company, basically.
Yeah. It's so amazing how many things have stayed the same over this. And I mean, that's why I think the maritime industry gets kind of a bad rap, right? It's like, how many of these things have been the same for hundreds of years? Yeah.
Well, here's the cool thing about the shipping container, though. It was started by Malcolm McLean. A lot of people know that. Maybe you guys, if you know that or not. But the reason he started is the way most entrepreneurs come up with something, right? They're just frustrated and pissed off. Like in 1935, when he was like 21 years old, he was 22. Gets out of college, right? And he wants to start a trucking company. So he buys a used truck and starts a truck company with his brother and his sister. They're starting to pick up cargo at the ports, but it's taking forever. Getting this break bulk. It takes forever for the longshoremen to get it off. They're going at their own pace. It takes forever to get it into the truck, and it takes forever to bring it back. So in 1937, people out there crapping on millennials, right? 24 years old. He was like, you know what? I'm going to invent the shipping container. The intermodal shipping container, and that's when his first design for the shipping container came to fruition.
I was going to say, I mean, but what weren't they initially just truck trailers? He was kind of experimenting. He was kind of trying to get it right, and basically they were still on the chassis. It was like the entire trailer.
Yeah. So his first idea, because like he was just like, will this even work? He built the shipping container. He had the truck pull it with the whole chassis, and they would go on the boat. And these things were called trailer ships. And this lasted for a while. I mean, it lasted through the 1950s, and then I think when he was thinking about his container and he thought it more through, he's like, well, the truck itself it's kind of stupid to put it on there because it takes up a lot of space.
Right.
It's got that VGM, it's got that gross mass to it, and you can't stack the containers if they're on a bunch of trucks because you're not going to stick a bunch of trucks on top of each other. So what happened was that he went out and he bought a couple of World War II tanker ships. And he retrofitted them. One of them was the Ideal X, and he bought these in 1956, a $22 million loan. It's got to be, what do you think that is in today's dollars?
Man, probably like 2 or 3 billion, probably. I don't know.
Pull up an inflation calculator. Find that out for me. 22 million loan. So he converted these to the first box ships, the Ideal X on the Ideal X, and he turned this idea around really quick. It was in April 26, 1956. He did his first maiden voyage from Newark to Houston, And immediately the international longshoremen, one of you guys heard about this before, them going on strike or being upset. They were like, I want to sink that son of a bitch. True quote from one of the international longshoremen.
So 100, it's saying basically, it looks like it would be somewhere around like 900 million.
900 million. Wow, that's a decent, that's like, so he was almost like the Flexport of his day.
Yeah.
That's a serious investment to get, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but you're right about the longshoremen. I mean, this is a tight knit group, man. That generations have been at the port, and this was a fundamental shift. You could say it was kind of it's not really the demise, but it's just certainly landscape altering time right here.
I mean, it was the longshoremen and the unions who felt very threatened by this at the time, and I'm sure there's some mafia involved too.
Oh God,
a lot of things went missing from docks back in the day. A
lot more than you would even realize, especially since the Irishman, man. I had no idea about all that.
Yeah,
nuts.
Well, my dad comes from the world of like marine cargo insurance as well, so he's always got some stories. He was on like a month ago. We'll have him on again. He works for Roanoke Trade, so yeah,
we need some of those stories.
Yeah, he knows that. He knows he knows the industry very. He actually brought marine cargo insurance to Boston. Nobody there was really selling it until my dad got there. I was like,
oh man, yeah. I imagine he has some interesting stories, no doubt.
But eventually, by the 1960s, the market started heating up. People were seeing the innovation in there. By 1973, 4 million TEUs were shipped globally annually, so that was really big for the time. But what really propelled it was standardization. So the ISO containerization regulations, because prior to that, there were other manufacturers. They copied his idea for the shipping container, and there were 24-foot ones and 30-foot ones and 36-foot ones, and some had 8.5-foot ceilings and some had 7. It made it very hard to stack them, and it made it very hard to use gantry cranes, another big innovation that helped change the world and make the box actually work. Because it's not just the box itself that changed the world, but it was ports themselves deciding to work with it, and then shipping companies deciding to retrofit their ships to use it and realizing that this was such a great idea.
Yeah, it's all about volume. It's all about time. I think, you ever feel like time's just like shrinking somehow? Things are just getting faster and faster. This certainly was a big part of that.
The other major thing in the 70s that helped move this along was deregulation. In 1977, transport carriers that move goods were allowed to invest and build out into multi-modes. So there was some consolidation amongst companies that were kind of had to have shell companies like McLean Trucking, who was dealing in the realm of ocean shipping, but also ground shipping. They couldn't be the same company. This allowed these major companies and companies like that exist today, a GlobalTraz, to even exist.
Yeah. I mean, think about what it did for international trade, because now it becomes cost effective to potentially put your factors of production, your manufacturing facilities abroad.
McLean was still at the forefront of a lot of this innovation. In 1984, he was now owning U.S. lines, and he developed a new carrier business that was moving jumbo container ships, providing round-the-world service. So hitting all the different ports, really increasing global trade. But one of the innovations he did, too, was to use smaller feeder ships for a lot of ports that either weren't dredged yet or really hadn't been built out or didn't have the height on the gantry cranes to remove the containers from the ships.
Yeah, similar situation like in Vietnam, right? You can't fit the mega ships. So yeah, they're very much having a lot of feeder vessels feed into places like Singapore, transloading onto those 20,000 plus TEU vessels.
Boston, Conley Terminal, it has very unique gantry cranes. Almost everyone's gantry cranes are backing up like this, but because of the airport and the height restrictions, they have to have theirs down. So they have specially retrofitted ones.
Oh wow!
I think they may be one of the only ports in the world that has that.
Wow. Fun fact there.
It is a fun fact. Here's another one. 1985, it saw the first electric OBL. 1985.
Wow.
By 1991, 6 of the world's largest ports were in Asia. According to FreightWaves, in 1994, this is an interesting one, a BBC series is made on the conversion of shipping containers for office space, the first mass media exposure of the concept of using containers for more than just their purpose of shipping. So making those shipping container homes. Have you seen those shipping container pools?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's impressive. Not only are they being used for doomsday prepping, but the people have been pretty creative with them.
Back in the day, you'd like put it in the ground and pour concrete around it and make sure you just had like a radio that could get InfoWars on it. And
that's actually pretty brilliant. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I can do that at my house.
What? Just make your escape, your bug
No,
out bunker?
no. I was gonna build a pool.
Oh, out of the shipping container?
Yeah.
How much is what's the going rate for a used shipping container down here in the South?
I think you can get, I mean, it depends on the quality, I think, but I think you can get one between $500 and $1,000.
Oh, not bad.
No, I mean, that's like a 40-foot too.
My neighbor across the street from me, and I'm in this apartment building, and I can see from the balcony, they have a smaller house, and they have a very scary shipping. It's the rusted out kind.
Oh God.
Like that you'd use as like a garage if you didn't have garage space.
Yeah. My father-in-law has one out at his farm. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, like the kind that like when you're watching ID Discovery, they find people like locked in.
Yeah.
Like the missing girl.
Oh, especially the rusty, creepy ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably get one of those for a few $100.
Yeah, without the seal on it.
Makes you wonder what's going on inside that thing.
In 2001, McLean, he died, leaving along his legacy. He's in a lot of the shipping Hall of Fames. You know, big name in the game. Over 90% of global trade now it hits sea, with the average vessel holding more than 18,000 TEUs. But here's an interesting chart. So, and I wish I could throw this up, but we're looking at the growth of GDP and what it did from, and this is in billions, so I'll just give you the number. But in 1955, so this is in billions, 61.81, 1950. By now, it's 19,453.36. So massive. I mean, look at this line. Look at that line if you like lines. But that's the growth. And immediately once deregulation happened, like look at that. That happened in the 70s.
Right.
Like, if you check in on here, I don't know if my camera guy can zoom in, but if you look on here, that's just the massive growth. I should have given him a slide on that one. That's my bad. But and also this is an audio podcast. So, but it's a hockey stick. It just drives right up.
Yeah, I mean, that looks very similar to like a China GDP graph, right?
Yeah.
Almost like exponential growth during that time period.
Now, Connect is an organization in Massachusetts where they bring a lot of shipping companies together, and they have a few meetups a year. It's kind of that older fashioned, like more stoic kind of thing, but I am like, for some reason, I'm really good at winning raffles. And every time I've entered there, I've won some sort of raffle. But there's a book that they always have in the raffle. It's The Box, How the Shipping Container Made the World Smaller and the World's Economy Bigger by Mark Levinson. Makes the case that the shipping container and its global intermodal use was one of the most important innovations of the second half of the 20th century. And I would say you don't even have to put that second half caveat on there, right?
Yeah. I mean, because if you think about the technology, I mean, these shipping containers go to places that don't even have electricity sometimes, right? Like, it's almost like you can use them anywhere as long as you've got, a truck to take it out there. You can load it. It's making global trade possible.
Yeah, and it's a cool story, bro, because of the benefit of an outsider. He had outside eyes. He was not from the ocean shipping industry. He was a trucking executive, as we mentioned, and he wanted to. Originally he just wanted to expedite his own trucking business so he could get the hell out of the port. But
Right.
He realized that there was a space for this because he can't be the only trucking company. And he's not the only truck stuck at the port. And he's not the only guy stuck in traffic.
Right.
And, as long as people have had trucks, there's been a pissed off trucker behind the wheel.
Yeah, think about how that catches on too. Like now, I feel like every time you have an idea, it's kind of been taken. There's probably like a patent filed.
Yeah.
Like to see this grow over time, it just must have been amazing. When did he pass away? How many years did he get to live and see?
It was in 2001.
Okay.
So he got to see a lot of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it would already been to the point that global trade was massively criticized. NAFTA had already gone through. But if you think about the world without the intermodal container, and this is like to make an assumption that nobody in all of this time would invent one, and they probably would. But let's say they didn't, and we're still shipping everything by break bulk. What does the world and the economy look like now?
Man, you got to think. I mean, look at China, look at Japan. I mean, the rise of the East Asian economies. I mean, it certainly was made possible by that. It makes you wonder if he saw that and he's thinking, man, did I almost like destroy a lot of American industry, or was it bound to happen? Like, would somebody have come along and still created that? I think it certainly makes sense. You're trying to fit. It's just like pallets, or it's like how LTL moves or anything like that, right? Like, it just it makes sense from an efficiency standpoint. I just wonder if it would have gone the same way.
We published an article on FreightWaves.com, and it may have been on AmericanShipper.com too. I love it. We've been doing a lot of these historical pieces. I mentioned the Online Hall of Fame that has McLean Trucking in there. That one was published last week. And we're also publishing these, like, how much does, and like one of them was how much fuel can a container ship carry? So these massive ships, and it broke it down, and I don't know if you guys want to guess. Do you want to guess how much because there's a lot of different sizes. So we'll go with CMA CGM Benjamin Franklin. It is I think it's 18,000 TEU ship. It's one of the largest ones that calls the U.S. How many gallons of fuel do you think this thing carries?
Well, I saw Craig post that he said it costs $10 million to fill up this baby. So $10 million, you're looking at bunker fuel's probably around like 350 metric ton. I mean, man, oh goodness gracious, it's got to be 50,000. I could be way off.
4.5 million gallons of oil on the ship.
That's insane. That thing is as long as the Empire State Building is tall.
I know, they're like, if you don't see them in person, or you don't have like banana for scale next to it, and a banana would be too small because it's so big. If you don't have the tugboat, for scale. And by the way, tugboats are even like when people think of ships, like if you go to Boston Harbor, they have like old Ironsides there, and they have some of like the really old like vessels like that the Puritans and stuff were on. And if you see the tugboats that are out there now, they are the size of like the Mayflower.
Oh yeah, they're huge.
Yeah. Well, and the Mayflower is really small.
There's no better
Plymouth Rock.
Hey, there's no better place to put it in perspective. If you're near Savannah, going down there on the river, have you a drink at one of those bars, watch those ships come in. It's eye-opening. That was the first time I was like just mesmerized. I could not believe it.
They are much bigger in person than you envision them, and you have to see them in person to take in their scale and the absolute massiveness. And it's not like you can get a full picture of it if you're right up on it.
Mm-mm.
The one unfortunate thing about Conley and Boston is that because Boston's basically built in a landfill, is whenever they dredge there, like all of the sediment just pushes right back in with with the water flow and the currents and everything.
I believe it.
So we can only have ships of a certain size, and I think that they did have an 8,000 TEU ship call there. I think they used to be limited to like 6,000. And if I'm wrong, someone correct me in the comments. But I believe that they just recently have been able to call the 8,000 TEU size. But the amount of gallons of fuel that you can put on the 8,000 to 4,000 TEU range ship is between 2.5 million and 3.5 million gallons of fuel. One of the things that people may not think about is, remember when the Hanjin bankruptcy happened?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the ships got stuck for a lot of reasons, but one of them was that who is going to pay that bill, that millions of dollars just to fill the tank of the ship up to even get it moving?
Yeah, it certainly exposed all these different contracts, because you're sitting there wondering, why can't the ship call the port? And like, they owe them money. Well, they hadn't paid this, and then you start to see it started to uncover a lot of the hidden parts of the industry. Well,
and then the ports are like, if they can't afford to fill up, how are they going to get out of port? And now we're just going to have a giant boat stuck here and are tying up our cranes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But there's just a lot of reasons. And then you get into all the issues with cargo and, is that going to go to creditors, and what happens with that? I mean, it's a mess. And again, we talk about risk. That risk software is coming in. Well, your carrier going bankrupt is a major risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think right now you're seeing a landscape where I think, man, one of these carriers could get into some trouble. I think Hyundai and Yangming, I think they've always kind of been on that level in terms of being at the lower tier of all of the largest carriers, and financially not being super solvent. And I think both of them have been backed out, or have been bailed out by the government multiple times.
Let's move on to talking about some data. Let's talk about SONAR a little bit, and a little surprise you found in there. On this very show, we were talking about like maybe this pre-Chinese New Year bump won't be that great, but
man, I've been so surprised. I mean, I'm wrong, basically. I thought a lot of this volume would have moved into 2019 again for the risk, but I guess a lot of people saw the end in sight. Said, okay, let's wait until we normally would, which is like a week, 2 weeks before Chinese New Year. Man, the Los Angeles market, so you got to think it's Long Beach and Los Angeles. We look at it for the trucking market. The volumes that are coming into there right now are higher than peak season.
Now, when we talk about the trucking market, we focus a little bit more on the ocean and the air on here, but in the trucking market, one of the benefits of having a bad 2019 was that, and it's bad for 2019, good for 2020, is less people bought new trucks, right?
Sure.
So that means that there is going to be less capacity by proxy. So less capacity means better rates for that trucking market. For you, the shipper, that means you're probably going to have to pay a little bit higher rates coming into the new year. So what's good for the geese is good for the gander, but or maybe not in this case.
Sure.
But ultimately for the economy, and if you have one of our economists like Anthony Smith, they always talk about how there should be a baseline on those rates. And we do that DHL Supply Chain Pricing Power Index, which for a very long time was, and on that index, I'll just explain it real quick. There's 0, which is in favor of the shippers, and 100, which is in favor of the carriers. And that looks like at a number of metrics, outbound tender volume, outbound tender rejects, which just means the amount of shipments going out and the amount of trucking companies who are deciding not to pick them up, right?
Sure.
We look at those. We look at trucking stocks. So it's a peer review of the greater economy.
It is.
And when that's bad, and when that's leaning too much in either direction, it means that there is something fundamentally wrong with the economy. In 2019, I mean, there's been doomsayers talking about recession for, I don't know. It seems like every year now, but 2019 was a big one. I'm
certainly a part of that group in terms of the greater economy. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that 2019 was definitely a down year. We did bleed off a lot of capacity. But is it enough? Again, I think volumes will be lacking after Chinese New Year. You're going to have this big period between then and contract negotiations. Like you typically would be at the end of April. They may move them up some, but really 2 to 3 months is going to be fairly rough. So it'll be interesting to see if more bleeds off by that moment. And then I have to give a lot of the analysts credit. They're calling for the second half of 2020 for rates to go up. But I think there are some fundamentals underlying the U.S. economy that still have people like Anthony Smith a little concerned, because we've never really seen this scenario where there's been a trade war. They're pulling levers left and right, trying to boost certain, and it's hurting these people, but not hurting these. And, not everybody's taking a hit. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
You talked about contract season, and I recall working for a global 3PL when you're doing sales, and you mentioned how it kind of ends in that May period. If you did not make your sales by June, like you basically make your year during contract season, because everything else is going to be transactional.
Yeah.
And everything else is relationship building from there. So if you don't really land some good contracts, you might want to start sending out your resume. And I think a lot of sales guys know this, very disposable position doing 3PL sales. It's a really, really tough racket. And maybe we'll do a show on that at some point, a survival guide for doing sales for a global 3PL. But it's every time, like, I would go to a conference and you meet the guys who didn't wash out, who were still there. If they were still there, it was very rare that you got the same business card year to year.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, turnover in that industry is nuts. Like one, rep for a carrier, they'll just change, ocean lines all the time. So you're normally dealing with like the same person because it's more of a regional territory. But it is interesting to see the turnover and how, one just go to another carrier. And these guys know each other for years because they've just gone from carrier to carrier. They work with everybody. Yeah.
It's like bad NFL coaches. Like they're like, well, he does have coaching experience, so like they'll bring you in as a coordinator.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Better than like some bum off the street you got to explain everything to.
It's very similar to that, I'd say.
I would say so. It's hard to fall out of it if you want to stay in and you can deal with the heartbreak.
Yeah, man, it's funny. Like college football is much more cutthroat, I feel like.
Yeah. But so to sum it up, and you mentioned contract season, so after the new year, does this help or hurt the carriers in their negotiations because they can say, well, look how strained capacity was?
Well, they're certainly playing the card of increased fuel costs, right? They've had to retrofit these vessels, prepare for this low sulfur fuel mandates in 2020. The enforcement of that, I think, is a little bit gray. But I think heading into this contract season, I think the shippers, it's in their favor. Because I think, they kind of know that the ocean carriers are hurting a little bit, or they expect there to be, a decent downturn.
Yeah.
And it's gonna make, ocean rates go down along with that volume. And I think heading into that specific time period, they're going to be at a point where they're going to be able to dictate the rates much more than the carrier could.
And contract rates, when we say that, like they're just as fake at ocean. But the thing about ocean where they have an advantage over trucking is there's not 800,000 carriers that you can just play against each other. There's only a few networks now that you can really do that with. And if you have enough volume, fighting over a few pennies may not be worth it, because during these peak seasons, if you screw your carrier or you're kind of new in them, you're going to the back of the line. And you may not have that space that you need. And for the companies who are really doing well and who are going to be there, and you usually make the best trading partners as a 3PL salesperson, and also for the carrier, they understand that that's kind of the gambit.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you look at these large volume shippers. I mean, you got to think like the top 10 probably dictate, an enormous amount of volume for these guys. And I think, I bring up the example of like Flexport.
Yeah.
how difficult is it for you to start a freight forwarder from the ground up, try to be an NVOCC? So you saw a lot of literature coming out, or a lot of people saying, well, we don't see their shipments showing up in the customs manifest data. We don't see any flex port volume. We don't see that, the reality of that was they were using co-loaders, which I think is actually a pretty brilliant play, because you let them use their volume, consolidate it at origin, get the rates that you need, and you just focus on servicing the client. Because at the end of the day, you want to earn their business through service so that you can have a little bit of leniency with those rates. Because if it's just a commodity, that's a losing game, because you're lucky to make $50 to $100 on a lane like the Trans-Pacific eastbound, and that's what shippers are used to.
Yeah.
And there's someone out there offering it. If you're not, I mean, everybody's just undercutting one another unless you have this. That's why I love the idea of a 4PLs, because you can really bring that all in. And you say, I don't care who you book it with, I'll help you book it, and help you manage your transportation kind of from the same seat.
Speaking of creating capacity, Flexport, they had their own charter jet for a little over a year, and they were using Atlas, who was doing a lot of the back end for Amazon. Well, Amazon builds out its own pilot fleet, but Atlas was a big charter vessel for them. But Flexport hasn't been able to make money in it, and they're getting away from that business model. But I bring up air cargo because we will be at Air Cargo Nashville. I think it's the 26th to the 28th down at the Omni over there. I've seen the guest list. I know that there's going to be a lot of great hosts in there. We cover a lot of ocean stuff in there, but I think that Laura might be there. And if Laura is, we'll probably do a port report from. Are you going?
I won't be able to. I'm on baby watch. My wife could give birth any day now.
Any moment.
Yeah. So
even during this episode,
I've been called off. I got to stay here in the office.
All right. Well, Laura and I think, will be there, so we'll probably be doing a port report. I'm not sure if I think we're going to be live streaming from there. I'm not sure of the exact capabilities of the venue. I haven't been to this one yet, but I'm very excited. I've never been to Nashville. I know there's people from...
You've never been to Nashville?
I haven't been toAshville. I'm not from the South. I'm from the Northeast.
Certainly very touristy, but I think it's certainly a sight to see.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You would enjoy it. You strike me as someone who would have. You got your hat in your little carrying case?
I think I will.
You bust that thing out.
The guys from SiriusXM were here, and they invited me over to the studio if I get bored over at the Omni. So probably will. Go promo the event, give a shout out, say, hey, come over to the Omni if you're not there yet. NASA's going to be there. Flexport's going to be there. Roanoke's going to be there, but NASA will be there, and I'm very excited to talk to some of these moon guys to ask them how they faked the landing. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm excited to talk to them. Like, wicked smart people.
Might get punched in the mouth, man.
No, yeah. Oh, Neil, did you see that hook he did on that guy?
Oh, yeah. Or was it Buzz Aldrin?
Oh, it was Buzz. You're right. It was.
Oh,
Buzz.
He was furious. He wasn't having it at all.
Well, apparently that guy followed him around a lot. It wasn't like the first time he got in his face and was yelling about that.
What's funny is like you hear a conspiracy theory like we faked the moon landing. Like, then I heard one that was like we did indeed fake the footage of the moon landing, but we actually went.
Oh, but we couldn't get footage, so we faked it. That's like a light theory, right?
I'm not sure. Stanley Kubrick is in there somewhere. Not really sure.
Oh, well, I mean, is it necessarily a bad thing if we did? It's just sort of like a reenactment at that point.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing if we actually went. Yeah. Whatever.
We're excited. We'll have tons of stuff from there. I know we're doing What the Truck from that floor, doing FreightWaves Insiders, probably fuller speed ahead. So we're going to bring a lot of content, as we always do when we go to events on these all-day live streams. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's been a great time with you. What the Truck will be on tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and then on Monday I'll be back at 2 o'clock. Is it 2 o'clock yet? Hit the buzzer out here. You can follow me at Timothy Dooner on Twitter. That's DOONER. Henry Byers.
HByers at FreightWaves.com, or find me on LinkedIn, Henry Byers.
Yeah, look us up on LinkedIn. Keep the conversation going. We want to thank Adam Robinson for joining us on today's show. And I don't know, good luck to him in that GlobalTraz marriage. I love what he does from that content perspective.
I imagine he's excited.
Iceberg, right ahead.
Uh-oh.
I need to get one of my own soundboards.
Yeah. What's going on that ship?
I don't know, man.
The Kraken.
Where did you find that?
How does it end? Take it easy, guys.